Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our first showcase by the Center for Art Law today. The Center for Art Law, as you might know, is a not-for-profit research organization, and we're dedicated to offering resources and programming about everything related to art and law. We have tons of events, webinars, we have clinics, we even have a newsletter and a lot of research and database where we ask attorneys, we talk to appraisers, to artists, and we try to share information from various perspectives about the world and intersection of art law. So I would like to thank you all for coming and listening to some of the projects that we're working on. The center does so much, whether it's through our newsletter, our articles, our research, and the events. And we're starting to showcase our work at the center through these kind of conversations and webinars. So we're very grateful to all of our volunteers, to our supporters, our donors who make our events and work possible. And we're happy to introduce new supporters and donors after today as well. So as a very quick introduction about our work and what we do, I'll hand it over to Irina Tarsis, who is the founder and managing director of the center, who will guide us through more of our work and more of the research databases that we're hoping to show with you today.
Thank you so much, Athrea. Welcome everybody to our first showcase. The Center for Art Law has been around for a few years, and we have done terrific work. Every year, there's wonderful talent coming to the center as interns and volunteers and advisors and board members join us. We are expanding the resources that we're putting together for the use of everybody, from students to researchers, from attorneys to art historians in museum settings and auction houses. And I'm very pleased to be moderating conversation between one of our board members, Peter Toren, Amanda Buonaiuto, who is our lead researcher on not so new project on Nazi or looted art. It's very ambitious. We've been working on it this entire year, and are expecting to continue work on this for a few more years, hopefully with some assistance from a number of attendees today. We're also joined by Richard Aronowitz, who is the head of restitution at Christie's, who has a lot of experience in contextualizing why provenance research is important and has a lot of experience with various different cases. So as you must know, or might know, there is a lot in the news daily related to Nazi or looted art. And the project that we have envisioned is looted art recovery, but part one is Nazi era looted art. And I'm sharing with you just a couple of things that came out within the last few days. There's a Monet being returned yesterday. There was an article by Evelyn Comfens in the art newspaper about various aspects of cross-border approaches to recovering Nazi or looted art. And the work continues. There has been a lot done, not enough, but quite a lot for us to be able to synthesize and maybe learn not only from the history, but for the purposes of the future. There is a fantastic resource that is going to be published next year, Restitution Rules for Nazi Confiscated Art, a restatement. We're hoping to work with our colleagues in Europe on bringing together a lot of this content in one place. And the Nazi or looted art legacy, of course, is alive and is finding interesting and meaningful ways, not only onto the newspaper pages or auction house scene, but also into museums. There's a very interesting way that the Burley collection in Switzerland is being visualized and recontextualized right now. We are learning from past mistakes. Museums are learning from past mistakes, and hopefully this learning can get us further along. We have envisioned creating a database of all Nazi or looted art cases in one place that have been filed from 1940s on to the present day. This is a very ambitious project, and our goals include attracting more volunteers and field experts. We are very grateful to have already found a number of talented, qualified volunteers, both art historians and lawyers, willing to lend a hand, critique what we're doing. We're really, really grateful to each and every one of you, of them, for thinking with us what this data set should be able to do. We are hoping to assist with training and teaching some of this content. We are looking forward to working with museums that also wish to visualize information about Nazi looted art. And in the immediate future, in the spring of 2025, we plan to have a conference here in New York that will be hopefully hosted by Christie's. We received an offer to lend the space for an important conversation about data connected and related to Nazi looted art restitution efforts. So these are our ambitious goals. And I will turn the podium now to Peter Toren, who will talk about why this project is important. I have to say it was his suggestion that we should look at looted art carefully. And this is how carefully we have started looking. Peter, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Irina, and thank to everybody who's on the call today or on the webinar today and is interested in learning more about what we consider, both what I consider and what the Center for Art Law considers is a very important project, and we hope you guys in the phone can get involved to whatever degree you want to. My involvement and my concerns about this field really are very personal. And some of the things that I'm going to tell you this morning or this afternoon now really are personal, but go to why this project is important on an other than personal scale. Growing up, my father told me about his uncle, David Friedman, who was a collector of art and a very wealthy industrialist in Breslau, Germany. Obviously, he was Jewish. And really, in some ways, the story begins on Kristallnacht in November of 1938. And my father relayed the story many times, and it's how he remembers David Friedman's collection of art. On Kristallnacht, my grandfather, who was a lawyer in Breslau, a very prominent German Jewish lawyer in Breslau, was taken into custody by the Gestapo. And that evening, my grandmother got a call from a General von Kleist's office saying that he wanted to meet with my grandfather, to arrange for the sale or the purchase, I should say, of an estate from David Friedman. And my grandmother told General von Kleist that was not possible because the Gestapo had already taken him into custody, but von Kleist needed him to arrange the purchase of David Friedman's estate the next day. So General von Kleist arranged for the release on a limited basis of my grandfather. And what my father remembers is that he went to David Friedman's house the next day. My grandfather showed up to arrange for the purchase of David Friedman's property and make the sale kosher, let's say. And my father remembers spending about 6 or 8 hours in a particular room, looking at a painting, the painting Two Riders on the Beach by Max Lieberman. And you see here a picture of Two Riders on the Beach by Max Lieberman. And for a very long time, that painting disappeared. We had no idea where the painting was or anything like that. And fast forward about 60 or 70 years, and we were approached by some German attorneys who investigate in this field, saying that they had uncovered a list of all the paintings as well as the other property that the Nazis had taken from David Friedman's house, including Two Riders on the Beach. And my father retained them to search for it. Nothing happened for about 15 or 20 years. And then suddenly there was the situation involving Cornelius Gurlitt, and many of you are probably familiar with that, but he was the son of, his father was one of the Nazis' art dealers and had acquired a great deal of both stolen and other looted art, but as well as other art over the years. And to put a long story short, the German government, as part of a tax investigation, had raided his home and had uncovered two riders on the beach in his home in Munich, Germany. We were notified about this by the attorneys. And after about a year and a half, including having to sue the German government, and this is the first thing that the German government, and realize why this project is so important, because we knew that the German government had in custody or had in their possession two riders on the beach. We were able to prove that two riders on the beach had been taken, had been seized by the Nazis from my great uncle's house. Despite this overwhelming evidence of it, the German government was still very reluctant and put all kinds of obstacles in place not to turn over the painting back to us. And we even had to go and sue the German government before we were able to retain custody or get custody of two riders. And we did sell it at Sotheby's, where Richard worked at the time. But again, that shows really the difficulty of being able to recover stolen art, even when you have it, how hard it is to get it back. Since then, we've had other obstacles placed in our way to try to recover art that was looted from David Friedman. We've brought suit against the German government to recover art. Unfortunately, again it was dismissed. So I think that from a personal level, and all the obstacles and difficulties we've had in trying to recover this type of art, this family art that belongs to us, it's important to really, this project is important on a personal level for me, but the obstacles really illustrate why this project is really important, because it's not just me, it's all the other heirs, descendants, researchers who need this kind of database to be able to track looted art, to be able to bring cases, to bring the attention and publicize the important work that is being done in this particular area. And unfortunately, many of the cases that have been brought in the United States in the last 8 or 10 years to recover art have been unsuccessful because of the laws, because of the difficulty. So we really hope that a project like this, that has all this database, has the information that everybody can access easily, will make it easy locations of the art, whether it's in Poland, whether it's in Russia, whether it's in Germany, wherever, not only to learn where the art now is, whether it's in museums, but also to bring cases and to be able to really have researchers locate the art, and lawyers to be able to recover the art for their clients. So I think obviously the project is very important to me, but I think really the importance extends to people not just in my position, but really for anybody who's concerned about art in general, because I think it's really important that the rightful owners of the art that was looted from them by the Nazis 75 years ago retain custody of the art, because it's not easy in any way. That anything that we can do to make it easier to recover this art is a very important step.
Thank you so much.
I
Yes.
just want to add one thing just real quickly, Irina, I'm sorry. On the slides, there's the other basket weavers, which is the second art that we have been able to recover from my great uncle, David Friedman. The first one, the two riders on the beach, which I mentioned, was sold through Richard at Sotheby's now 9 years ago. We were able to get the basket weavers, which was in possession of a private owner, and my family, we actually purchased that painting for the same price that gentleman had purchased it from a German auction house in about 2000 or 2001. And we went ahead and actually purchased it for the same amount of money that he had purchased it, because that was an easier process than trying to, again, points out how difficult it was. It would have cost us far more and with an uncertain outcome had we pursued that pursued it legally. So again, that really illustrates of how important the work in this area really is, and finding and learning as much about it as possible. So I hope anybody on listening will get involved in some way in this very important project.
Thank you very much. We do invite questions and comments from our attendees, so please use the chat, and Peter will probably come back to you with a couple of questions. And the next guest or speaker is Amanda. She will explain the work that she has done so far. Amanda is an attorney trained in Brazil, and then trained again or continued training LLM degree from University of Bonn. Amanda reached out to the center saying, this is my area of interest. What can I do? And she's been doing quite a lot, researching, writing, and now organizing information about cases. Amanda, please tell us about your work.
Thank you, Peter, for your insightful presentation. I would like as well to thank the Center for Art Law for proposing such an important event. It's discussions like this that highlight the vital issue of the restitution of Nazi looted art, a subject that has been a particular interest of mine since my Master of Laws at the University of Bonn in Germany. Now, as a postgraduate fellow at the center, I'm honored to have the opportunity to be developing and leading the Nazi looted art restitution project. It's important to note that early this year, the US government released a guideline calling institutions to build central contact points to provide information about Nazi looted art claims, restitution, and other fair and just solutions. In response to this best practice, the center decided to create a database to collect all cases related to the restitution of artworks looted by the Nazis. Our work focuses on assessing this information, conducting a cross-referencing analysis to ensure its accuracy, and showcasing it in an interactive manner. Irina, if you could pass, please, the slides. Thank you. Our initiative is ambitious because this project is unlike any other. We are not limiting ourselves to specific collections, jurisdictions, or successful restitution cases. What we aim to do is gather as many public documented cases from around the globe as possible. We want to make a difference by organizing everything in a mindful way. With this project, we can create a framework that reveals a lot of different patterns, serving as a valuable educational and research tool for the future. The project will also amplify media attention, raise public awareness, and aid in identifying and restitution missing artworks. I'd like to focus now on the interactive aspect of our project. Our goal is to use a digital visualization tool to showcase the data collected, including a timeline. Here we have a brief demonstration of this format. Since the project aims to reach a wide range of users, including the general public, we decided to present all the information in a topic-basic format. In the database, we have 25 different entries for collecting data, such as the names of the parties involved, the artworks, title, the year and conditions of the taking, the date of resolution, and much more. As shown in the video, with this interactive visualization, we can organize the cases chronologically and also use different colors to represent each type of dispute, such as litigation, voluntary restitution, settlement agreements, and others. The success of this project depends on its accessibility and functionality. While our current timeline is visually appealing, it unfortunately has significant limitations. The platform where it is currently hosted doesn't allow us to fully showcase the data collected and emerging patterns. I think we can see the video until the end, and then I'll read it.
Thank you. I think the video is finished.
Yeah, can you please pass for the other slide?
Yes, there we are.
So, well, we believe that with the development of a new visualization tool specifically designed for this project, we could achieve so much more. To make that happen, the center is seeking funding. This will help us ensure a user-friendly and accessible interface for our project. The funds won't just go towards data visualization. They will also allow us to hire the necessary staff to continue our research. This means formally bringing me on as the lead researcher and also recruiting legal and art historians professionals to support us. If you are interested in helping us grow this project, whether through volunteer collaboration, submitting cases, funding, or donation, please don't hesitate to reach out to the center. I would like to end my presentation thanking all the interns, volunteers, and experts who have supported us so far. Your assistance has been really important for the Looted Art Restitution project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. This is a very good overview of the enormous amount of work that you have done already. But we have had a number of students work in tandem, and I'm happy to report that one of the initiatives this fall is we will be working with a group of students from Berkeley Law School, asking them to read additional cases and help add materials to the data set that is in the works. There are over 300 cases that we have collected on our side already. We anticipate finding hundreds more. One of the questions asked in the past was which entries will make the cut, which information will be included in the database and which will not be included. And for the time being, we will include all disputes that are known, whether they have been resolved or pending in courts around the world. We are focusing on lawsuits and disputes that have been launched and made public, whether they've been heard by commissions in Europe or by members of the judicial. All right, before I introduce or turn the floor to Richard, I know that there are a few questions and I thank you very much for sending them in. Our next guest and speaker is an attorney as well as an expert on restitution for one of the leading auction houses. Richard, would you please help us explain why restitution is important in your work and in general?
I'd be delighted to. I must correct you on one point. I'm an art historian rather than an attorney.
You're not an... I thought you were. Okay, thank you. I apologize.
So in my early practice, I was an impressionist and modern art specialist at the auction house that dear Peter mentioned earlier. But I've spent the last 18 and a half years of my life not acting as an art historian, but acting more as a provenance researcher. And as you on this panel know very well, like many museum landscapes around the world, the international art trade takes the 1998 Washington Conference on Holocaust-era assets and the 11 Washington principles that came out of that conference very seriously. There are only really two major auction houses that have significant restitution teams. My team, in fact, is the largest. I'm one of 11 people that work in the restitution department at Christie's around the world. We have colleagues in London and New York, and in Brussels and Vienna and Berlin. So we're quite geographically well spread. And we have a number of functions, but by far the most important of which is to make sure that we don't unwittingly allow an unrecovered piece of Nazi looted art in its very broadest definition, from works that were outright confiscations to works that were sold by Jews as they tried to flee Nazi Europe, or works that were sold in so-called Jew auctions after 1933. We try to ensure that none of these slip into sales undiscovered, and that if the works are still claimable today, that we act as essentially mediators between our client, the consigner, and a set of claimants who descend from the original victim of loss. So we're there both to do quiet research, to try to ensure that we discover all works that consign to us that might have an unresolved Nazi-era taint. And we then, when we discover such taints, we try to set up a dialogue, usually via one of our team, between the consigner of the work to our auction house and the set of claimants who have an unresolved title claim to that piece. And one of our key challenges, and indeed it's probably the biggest challenge for anyone working in the field of 1933-45 provenance research, is access to information. So that any research project that adds to the font of knowledge in terms of 1933-45 provenance research can only be a good thing, because we all, working in our complex, time-consuming, very nuanced field, we all suffer from a challenge from time to time accessing data. Of course, that has shifted significantly since the Washington Conference on Holocaust-era assets, where there's been an absolute efflorescence of data since that landmark event in 1998. We're now talking about 26 years later. So the databases that are available are vast compared to what was available back in 1998. Obviously, the advent of the internet and digitization has helped all of us enormously, but still there's the need for an increased expansion and accessibility to data. And what particularly is fascinating about this project, as I understand it, is it's aiming to be a one-stop shop for both live claims that are going through some form of litigation and data on their resolution. Sometimes, for instance, my team of researchers will come across in a work that's been consigned to us evidence that it seems to have been lost during the Third Reich, and we're not at that point sure whether it was recovered or the claim resolved between 1945 and today. And when we dig deeper, we do indeed find that the claim was resolved. It's just for some reason not recorded in the historical record for the work of art that's available to us. So if such data could be encapsulated here, that would help people like me and my team of researchers very much indeed. You're seeing in front of you a very wonderful Van Gogh watercolor and gouache that was sold Christie's New York a few years ago, that turned out to have not one, but two unresolved Nazi-era title claims attached to it. Before my time, by the way, at Christie's, and our team of wonderful researchers both discovered the dual problem with the ownership history between 1933 and 45, and then set about resolving those two taints. One was essentially a flight sale, and one was an outright confiscation in Paris from the Rothschild family soon after Paris and France had been invaded. So that's evidence in front of you of one very significant work sold, I think, in 2021 by Christie's New York. So that's a visualization for your audience of the sort of work we do. We discover issues, and these issues obviously happened now. Peter mentioned, I think, 75 years ago. Many of them happened more than 80 years ago, which makes accessing data all the harder. But the job of my team is to discover unresolved Nazi-era taints, and then working with the expert departments and working with, of course, the consigning family or individual or institution to resolve those taints. I'm happy to answer questions as we go along, of course.
Richard, thank you very, very much. There are lots of terrific questions, and a number of people are asking how they can be involved because they've done trainings and they would like to contribute to the database. Amanda has prepared, when you visit Center's website, and I'm happy to walk you through that, we have a special section on resources, and one of them is Nazi or Looted Art Project. There is an entry, there's a form that you can fill out if you wish to submit a case that you believe we should include in this data set. As Amanda mentioned, the visualization that exists right now is just a sample of what we can do if we organize this information just in chronological order. And we would like to organize it in many different ways. And again, having talked to many, many researchers and people with vast amount of experience, much more experience than we have indicated that the most priceless thing is clean, clear data. And it is possible that the great data set that we will put together will be available for researchers to organize the way they think makes sense. We're not interested in hoarding this information. We just want to have it central. As Richard said, I'm not sure we can, I think we can aspire to be a one-stop shop because this information is available and we would like to learn from it. And I think others can as well. And the learning will come in different shapes and forms. There's one question about an FBI data set. There's also a question about IFAR's work, and IFAR's work has been phenomenal. We're very well aware of what they've done, and we would love to work with them as best we can going forward. There has been an announcement about IFAR's change of status, but they have done a wonderful work organizing information about cases, and we look forward to incorporating, maybe working with them on augmenting our resource. Right now, Atreya has posted a survey, which we would appreciate you taking and telling us a little bit about yourselves. Again, for our internal purposes, we plan to do more showcases of the important work at the center, and we would like to understand what parts of the center's work are meaningful to you, what we can do to improve the experience. We've been collecting a lot of feedback, and one of the feedbacks is there's just too much information. I guess it means that we need to make the information presented in a more coherent and meaningful way.
Irina, can I just
Richard,
jump?
yes,
Please do. Before
please
you,
do.
I just want to jump in there and just offer 2 cents at this point. I think the fact that people just on this webinar have asked questions of that they would like to contribute data or their own personal experiences and cases really illustrates that there is really nothing out there like what we're trying to accomplish here. And just to emphasize that it's really that we want the public, we want researchers, we want everybody to be able to contribute data to our database, and then to use our database that we're trying to develop. Because there's really, there was a question about, doesn't the FBI have this? And the answer to that is no. The FBI only has the information about actual art that was stolen, which is very different than art that was looted by the Nazis. So there's really, as best as we can tell, we're willing to work with people, organizations that have similar efforts ongoing, but there's really nothing out there that is nearly as comprehensive as what we're trying to accomplish with this database. And I think that's really an important distinction.
One of the questions we have is, have you considered working with Lost Art Germany and Looted Art Commission in UK? And the answer is absolutely. We would like to work with everybody, and we don't intend to, I think I mentioned, to hoard this information. We just want to make it centralized and organized and available. The lessons to be learned will be different for everybody. If there's a case, for example, that was filed, there's a question, I filed the case and it was dismissed, okay, we will include that case. We will summarize the information provided in the complaint. Ideally, we would be able to include an image of the work that was claimed and the decision of the court. It's public information, and we're not making a judgment on the law or any other aspect of that particular instance. It's reflective of the Nazi or looted art restitution history, and we would like to include, as I said, all the cases that have been filed worldwide. How long it would take us, it's not clear. We do need to, historically, the center has been very much focused on the substance. And one of the reasons for the showcases is to make sure that we can fund the work of the researchers like Amanda. She has spent, I can say, countless hours already, and we received a very modest seed grant, which we have used to pay Amanda just an honorarium. An honorarium, means thank you for your time. We wish it could be much more. So if there are possible financial supporters for this project, we have a special bucket set aside for the Looted Art Project research, and you can make a donation on our website or reach out to me or Peter and talk about it. I have Alfred Foss who raised a hand, and I wonder if we can allow people to ask questions directly. I'm not sure if that's possible.
Yes, we can do that. I will just give permission.
While Tria's doing that, I just want to add one more thing, that really the database that we're trying to create here or have created already is really for use by not only by lawyers and by researchers and by provenance workers, but also by the general public. And lawyers obviously have legal databases that they can learn about cases that were decided in the United States, things like that. But unless you have access to LexisNexis in the United States or one of the legal databases, you don't have, the general public doesn't have, and researchers often don't have the ability to access legal work. And we'll have all that in a single place, not only for cases decided in the United States, but cases decided anywhere in the world.
Could I quickly answer Emma Barrett-Ryan's question? She asks whether Christie's in-house legal team work closely with my team. Of course, when we discover an unresolved Nazi-era taint, and we are working towards a resolution of that taint with our expert colleagues and the consigner or consigners and the claimant side, we work very closely with the legal team. They help guide our work, even though much of our work is done in the spirit of the Washington Principles, which are not laws, but moral ethical codes. And they, of course, most particularly help draft settlement agreements between the claimant side and the current owner side. So they do the paperwork that documents the settlement of an unresolved Nazi-era taint. So we work very closely on a daily basis with our legal teams around the world. I hope that helps, Emma.
Thank you, Richard. Alfred, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, first of all, I'm really thankful for your effort. I'm a claimant myself, and I think it's great that people make an effort and they want to get into the action and try to give as much information about looted art, Holocaust looted art as possible. So I already asked you the question is, there are at the moment a lot of databases around, the biggest being the German Lost Art and the UK Looted Art. I think everybody who is in the business of restitution knows about these two, who are the biggest, and there are others smallest also. So I was wondering, how would you cooperate with them, or would it be possible that all these the big ones and the smaller ones in your initiative would work together? Because to do it all over again and again and again is an exercise which is, not very fruitful. The other question I had, you were talking about 300 cases that you already investigated or you were working on, which is not very clear to me. There are tens of thousands of cases of looted art, and people say even more looted art paintings. So is your aim to get all these paintings which are looted or which are claimed, where claimants come up, or like the NK collection and the SIPS collections, and we have all over the world collections. Do you want to put them all together in one database, or you want only to put together 300 cases? I didn't understand the number of 300, if you could elaborate on that one.
So I'm going to answer part of it, and then you can answer the other part. In the ideal world, which we are definitely striving towards, we would include tens of thousands of works. And then the data set would allow us to search by a particular collector or particular location of looting or particular artist. We would like to visualize information using modern technology to learn from the Nazi or looted art period more than just looking at one case in particular. So the 300 are, of course, as a tip of the iceberg, and working with other big data sets and other information gatherers is part of our objective. Amanda, do you want to add anything?
Well, yeah, the 300 cases were what I have collected since March. So as Irina said, our project has a really broad scope. So that's just really the tip of the iceberg, because we really want to collect and put everything together into just one place, into just this database.
Okay, so you have a big job before you, that's for sure. I wish you a lot of success.
Thank you. Thank you. Yvonne?
Hello, yes, thank you. I'm very happy to hear of all these things that are going on. I'd like to know if there's been any attempt, and I'll address this to Peter, to think of starting a legal theory of settled cases by duress. And if that is a special way in which we can start to identify things also in the database. Because this whole sense of cases having been settled is a spectrum of different issues, and many families who settled things before we had laws enacted and other kinds of the movement was a little more firmly established, settled for next to nothing under great duress, and that should be something that the database would be able to keep track of.
I'm not sure when you mean cases that were settled under duress, do you mean
families that settled cases either with museums or with government entities for far, far less than they would and should have been able to receive at this point, but for the political situation or the legal situation, received next to nothing. And therefore, those cases look as though they're moot, and those pieces of art float around in the art market. I think the field needs to keep track of that and keep a database of that, and that should be noted.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. I think my response to that would be, are the situations that you're describing, are they cases that were settled publicly, or is the settlement available publicly, or simply that the cases were brought and there was a settlement? Because my experience as a lawyer is that many cases, not most cases, that are settled, in terms of the settlement agreement are confidential. So certainly the cases that are actually brought or made public against a museum, against an auction house, whomever, that would be part of the database without question, if we have access to that, to the extent that we are aware of the terms of the settlement, that would be included in the database as well. I'm just saying it's going to be very difficult, or it may be very difficult, to say that what the terms of the settlement were, and arguably that they were settled under duress, but somebody who's researching that area certainly would have access to those cases that were brought. Whether they would access to the terms of the settlement, I simply don't know the answer to that question, and I would think probably not.
That's very true, and for that reason, I think it's very important that this project cooperate with and empower claimant families who have access to their own documentation, those of us in the second and third generation who have access to our families' records. The because a lot of those families have given up. And I think that's a valuable resource where claimant families need to be empowered and included.
We
Thank you.
welcome without question, again, as Irina has said, we welcome without question any data that can be provided to us, and assuming we can establish the veracity of that information, which, you know, it doesn't violate, for example, doesn't violate some settlement agreement to publicize it. We certainly welcome that, and I can assure you that it would be made part of the database. So we welcome anything that can come to us that can add to the public's understanding of this particular area.
Yes, thank you. And dare the German government and German government institutions for coming after families now for disclosing information of things that happened many years ago. I'd love to see that lawsuit against a family and to have that one defended. But thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Irina, may I just answer
Yes.
quickly Gary Nurkin's good question, which was, does Christie's deal with other types of repatriation issues, such as looted antiquities stolen by ISIS, etc., antiquities stolen by Bolsheviks after the Russian Revolution? Broadly speaking, yes, on a case-by-case basis. Those questions aren't, however, dealt with by my team. My team is clearly delineated by work within the 1933-45 arena, Nazi Europe. Any other forms of loss or sequestration, confiscation, seizure are dealt with by the legal teams around the world. So I and my team deal with almost exclusively Nazi-era losses, and on occasion looting from its citizens by the East German regime. But that's the delimitation of what my team does. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much. There's a question about working with government professionals, for example, from Poland. Thank you, Philip Strzeżewski, for your question. We are certainly open to the idea of working with various government ministries, etc., if they have information. So far, for the purposes of limiting the project to some scope, if we have tens of thousands of cases to include, we need to have information that is verifiable, and we have information that shows who are the claimants, heirs are, and who are the respondents, defendants, etc. We are going to use courts and hearings in front of the commissions as, or maybe, and probably in cases reported as settled or mediated in the news as a way of verification. Cases that haven't been filed, for example, or artworks that are missing, their locations are unknown, are not part of this project for the time being, because we have to figure out how to organize this vast amount of information. Ideally, for each case, we would also be able to have at least some of the court filings, maybe complaints, or maybe the decisions, or maybe all of the above. And so organizing this information in a accessible and orderly fashion would require working with tech experts, not only attorneys and art historians and provenance researchers, but also coders and computer scientists, for which we need funding, of course. None of the people on the call, to the best of my knowledge, have coded before. We're using tools like Google Drive and tools like Tiki-Talkie to organize information, but we do want to have the information available and accessible. There's another question about the fee to access the database. It's an excellent question, and we don't have an answer to that yet. Right now, the database is presented as a sampler on our website, and I'm happy to share and demonstrate where you can find this information. Our website is itsartlaw.org, and under resources, you can see Nazi Looted Art Restitution Project. We're even in a bit of a debate as to the exact name of the project. There are a couple of feedbacks we received where we're not married to the top title. We're just married to the idea of putting this information accumulated over decades into a usable visualization 4 different constituents. So for the time being, the interactive timeline resides on our website here. We're considering having a separate website for the project, which will link with the center's site, but you can scroll through and see what Amanda has done so far. Each case here in the sampler has preliminary, or not preliminary, but kind of limited information, and we would like to flush out more. We're in talks with a number of nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, independent researchers, heirs, etc., to come up with a good sound structure to make this data tell us information that we have not seen before. And you can see that we're also organizing articles that we have written on the subject. We also have a case law database where we're giving short summations on related matters, and we're happy to include each and every organization that is dealing with Nazi or looted art research. There is a raised hand. Thank you.
Oh, am I speaking?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. So first, thank you so much for holding this conference and making it open for people. It's really great just to be able to share a story. I suggested that I had a case that I wanted to include that actually recently we got a dismissal at the state level court in New York, and I'm currently seeking legal assistance to try to revisit it. We did not get a dismissal on the merits, just on technical grounds, and a very strange ruling, but I won't go into it. So I guess the first question is, I'm looking for legal assistance, and I don't know if there's anyone listening or might be interested. That would be great. So that's kind of a question. The second thing I just wanted to say is, in my particular case, this involves a Rembrandt painting. It's Rembrandt's first signed painting. The painting was disguised to get it through a sham auction, where the sellers pretended that they didn't know it was a Rembrandt, which is just simply not true. It was on display in my grandmother's home. They painted over the date, they scraped the auction docket numbers off the back, and they altered the signature that was visible. But the original date is still partially visible. They just added some scenery on top of it. So the comment I wanted to make is, in order to get a stolen artwork through an auction event, it takes a lot of coordination. And one of the things that I saw was there might be a lot more coordination than people realize, in terms of how complex it is to put straw bidders in place and to have the cooperation of an auctioneer who won't draw too much attention to an artwork, particularly if it's untitled or presented as untitled. And so that I'm just throwing that out there as part of my case, and maybe something that might be worth looking into. And then lastly, And then lastly, is there any outcome that can be expected from inclusion in this type of, do you guys actually expect any sort of actionable outcome? Just asking. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. If there are any other questions, please raise your hand. We will have a few more minutes before the hour.
Just Irina,
the action. Yes,
whoever
Peter, go
just
ahead.
spoke should contact me offline, and I can learn more about his case.
Thank you.
Okay.
We can't anticipate the outcomes of being listed in the database. As I mentioned, and as Amanda mentioned, our objective is to be able to see what the history of litigation can show. We would like to see the outcomes by decades, for example, and by locations. We would like to see which artworks and artists may have been looted more or restituted more often. We are looking to use this information for different purposes, not exclusively to assist in ongoing and future litigation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question from Dory. about who will be policing the database. With different projects, I found that certain individuals have been able to go in and manipulate or change the information. We will not, at this point, make the information open for changes by the members of the public. We have a team of attorneys and art historians reviewing the information. We will be including, for example, English titles to foreign artworks. We will review the decisions and try to have objective information there. If there's an error, there's a way of contacting us and letting us know that there's an error, but the information will not be open for everybody to change, as Wikipedia, for example, is. Are there any other questions that we can answer for you? We are hoping that we can raise money to pay Amanda to continue doing this work, and we're also in need of funding to work with technical experts to create various visualizations of the information that we find. Charity Gates, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Awesome. Thank you for hosting this discussion. I was just wondering, and also just curious in general, whether there's any sense to kind of look at cases of double looting, perhaps, like where there may be collections that might have had items that could have come from particularly colonial conquest that might have just been put into the market during that time period. Just to, for instance, the Benin bronzes. Is there any interest in looking at both cases in connection to see the intricacies of that?
Amanda, do you want to answer this one?
Well, I think everything related to Nazi lotted art we're going to include. So if it's a case of about double lotting, that's going to be there. But I think that the project, actually, our initial idea was to do a database that would be also directed to antiquities. So colonial lotted arts, yes, sorry. But well, if it has relations with Nazi lotted, we are going to include. Yes.
There is a second part to this project. For lack of better title right now, it's called Not Nazi Looted Art. And we are collecting cases and references to them in a similar format, but we haven't been able to delegate as much or designate as much time to part 2 of the Looted Art project. And ideally, yes, we would have both sets of information available and again, visualized. There's a question about partnering with law schools for clinical work and number of interns that the center takes. The center has a very robust internship program. This fall, we have 7 interns working with us. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, we have a group of students from Berkeley Law who will work remotely on summarizing cases. We plan, I can't say it in front of a thread, to take maybe another 7 interns for the spring semester. We look for students to have different interests and experiences and language skills. And we're happy to work with law schools to get this information collected. What, again, I need to be cognizant of is the resources that the center has. And we are looking for corporate sponsors. We're looking for institutional sponsors. Berkeley is going to be an institutional sponsor. And help cover some of the expenses associated with the case law database. Thank you for that question. If you have more questions for us, and I hope you do, and if you'd like to volunteer or assist us with fundraising, which is very important and not necessarily our strongest suit, please reach out to me or to Peter or to Athrea and Amanda. We are looking forward to your feedback. There's going to be an email sent around inviting your participation. And we're not daunted by the number of the cases. We are just trying to, parse this elephant and make sure that we can allocate our resources and run the marathon rather than sprint through this. It's not a sprint. Thank you all for joining us. Richard, thank you so much for being with us today. Your work is quite important and inspiring. We're grateful to Christie's for doing funding of some of the research, not ours, but the research that is very important in provenance realm. And we're looking forward to working with you on the conference in the coming spring. Amanda, terrific work. Thank you, Atreya and Carla. Peter, I'll see you at the next board meeting.
I just want to say one thing. I just want to thank Richard when he was at his former job at Sotheby's, for Sotheby's doing such a great job in helping us sell to writers on the beach, and how they handled that both from a financial and personal level. So I really want to extend
one of the most memorable experiences of my 21 years at the other auction house. So it was a hugely remarkable story, very, very touching. If the audience hasn't read about David Friedman of Breslau and that painting, you should all go away and read about it. It was a very, very moving, powerful story and a wonderful painting.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you all. Bye.